So we've been talking about how IMF and Cameroon are coming together to decide on a loan agreement about $74.6 million as the case may be, to drive some sort of economic recovery for that country. Now, the board is reviewing the modalities of these particular loan agreements, and there are speculations if or not IMF and the board will accede to this demand and be able to approve it. But then we are starting with the conversation around how Cameroon's economy has fared in the last 2 years. And this is the part where I bring Melaine back online to continue with your assessment of Cameroon's economy in the last 2 years to see if it has done well or if there's been a bit of challenge that it's not been able to deal with.
If we move right back to 2017, late 2016, 2017, Cameroon was pretty much on a trajectory of higher growth, but then a situation occurred within the country, political situation that created some sort of instability and reduced even food supplies within the country. So the increase in prices that are actually currently going on in Cameroon is not just as a reflection of the current situation internationally, but it is compounded by the situation internationally. The situation in Ukraine as well as the COVID pandemic made things even worse. So a combination, a mixture of all of these factors actually puts Cameroon where it is today. But that said, if we go right back to 2005, before the completion of the HIPIC initiative, Cameroon was on a balance of payment surplus of about $304 million US. Coming right up to 2022, we are now having a net export of goods and services, BOP, of minus $1.5 billion US. That's just a reflection that over the years, something has not been going on within the country. More has been imported from without than more has been imported from out of the country than it is being exported, hence creating the situation that has further been compounded by the events internationally. So that's a summary of what is going on in the country at the moment.
Now, at the end of September last year, Cameroon's public debt was estimated to be about 12.374 billion CFA. That's about $17.3 billion US. So financial analysts are actually asking the question, is it safe for Cameroon to still go ahead to seek a loan?
Any reasonable person who has had a finger on the situation in Cameroon would definitely say no. Cameroon public debt is about 40% of GDP, and by every economic standard, that is an unsustainable debt to GDP ratio. So the health of the country is definitely in precarious conditions, and it is further compounded by these loans that the country's authorities are seeking from the IMF, the World Bank, as well as other bilateral agreements that Cameroon is actually engaged with in terms of financial assistance from other countries, particularly China.
Now, Cameroon's economic recovery plan is set to go up $74.6 million. That is if the IMF and, of course, the board approves that. But the question is, what do you think the terms of the staff level agreements are? And would you say that those terms are favorable to Cameroon? And will they be able to meet up to those terms and conditions?
The mistake we actually make is judging policies actually from the intentions and not necessarily the incentives that those policies create. What are some of the terms of this agreement? Number one, Cameroon is to reduce the fuel subsidy. First and foremost, I do not necessarily think under any circumstances that as an oil-producing country, Cameroon definitely should have had fuel subsidies in the first place. Subsidies for most if you dig down into the data, usually create conditions that are not favorable for the broader economy. Secondly, the country is taking a step to undercut social strife that are likely to arise as a result of the cut in fuel subsidies by increasing public sector wages by about 5%, which I do think is infinitesimally small, given the current situation in the country and the rising inflation within the country. I do think that Cameroon can actually afford about 25% in public sector salaries. However, there are a series of things that must be done, which I do not necessarily think this agreement or the IMF negotiators have been able to put a finger on. One of them is public sector reforms. Public sector reforms. There are millions of ghost workers, Cameroonians who are living abroad, Cameroonians who have died, but their salaries are still going through, either through fraudulent schemes that have been negotiated at the different levels of different ministries within the country. Putting a finger on that actually will save the country a great deal. Number two, the agreement talks about the broadening of the tax base. For most of what has been happening in recent months, Cameroon has actually been deepening the tax base rather than broadening the tax base. How has that happened? Cameroon has taxed different incomes at different stages within the economy. Take, for example, the imposition of the mobile money tax within the country. You withdraw money, you deposit money, you withdraw money, or you send money, you pay a tax. You withdraw money, you pay a tax. And the country actually brags about collecting over between 9 and 15 billion francs CFA from this scheme. That is taxing the same amount of income at different levels. Rather, what should be happening is a simplification of the tax code within the country, the liberalization of certain sectors within the country, which will enable the creation of new businesses and create avenues through which, notwithstanding low taxes, if that is to be implemented, the government's tax receipts will actually increase. These are some of the things that definitely should be discussed and talked about. Look at, if we go back to the management of certain public enterprises, there are certain enterprises which should not exist. Take, for example, Cameco, the airlines, Cameroon Air.
Hello, Melaine.
The company that every now and then the government has got to pump about 2 billion, 3 billion or more into this company for what? Little to nothing over the years. These are some of the avenues through which the IMF and the World Bank, I do believe they have the authority, they have the negotiating capability to say, these are some of the things that we've got to do away with, we've got to reform these, save some money, and with that, the country can actually afford up to 25% in public sector salaries, rather than these piecemeal actions left and right, which will only create avenues for corruption and embezzlement.
But there seems to be some budginess in Cameroon government's economic and fiscal policy trajectory, as I am deducing from what you're saying. But then let me quickly take you back to the issue of fuel subsidy that you mentioned. Are you saying that fuel subsidy plan in Cameroon is a scam, or you are averse to it because it is not sustainable?
I do think, not necessarily that it's a scam, but I do think through the imposition of these fuel subsidies, many individuals have benefited from that. Number two, what's the essence? That's the first question. What's the essence of a subsidy? And when does the imposition, or when does a subsidy plan actually become obsolete? There have been several times, several periods, since the imposition or since the discovery of oil within Cameroon, that the global oil prices have actually dwindled as a result of excess supply of oil in the global commodities market. Yet, Cameroonians still pay, for most of this time, Cameroonians have still paid higher than the global average, if we keep aside the current crisis that is going on. So we do realize that notwithstanding this fuel subsidy, for most of the period that this subsidy was imposed, Cameroonians have paid higher than the average price per gallon of petrol at the pump. So you find that it is better to let the prices fluctuate based on the prices in the international market, and there will be times of pain as well as times of success or enjoyment as far as what has to be spent on fuel is concerned. So I do think removing the fuel subsidy totally will save the country a lot, particularly moving on from this period. And if the country actually is to take steps to make the management of oil revenues transparent and to actually increase or improve on its productive capacity at the level of oil exploration of the coast somewhere in Limbe, and as well as the exploration of new fields in the Bakassi Peninsula.
All right, now the board is, as we speak, considering the documents, they're reviewing it and looking at the modalities, and a statement will be put out on Monday. Everybody's looking forward to that. But then, are you optimistic that the loan deal will be approved? And of course, when or if it is approved, what critical sectors do you think that Cameroon should be investing this money into? Because what it's hoping to do is to drive a more buoyant, vibrant economy, looking at 2023 and beyond. So I'd like you to look at those two areas and tell me, are you optimistic? And what areas do you think can drive revenue and economic growth for Cameroon?
I am optimistic that this loan agreement will go through. I do not see any reason, given the track record over the years, I do not see any reason why the agreement will not go through. In terms of the different areas of investment, I already mentioned some. First and foremost, administrative reforms. Secondly, the country should, looking forward to the future, look on how to make the public service small and more effective. Thirdly, investments in hospitals, healthcare, as well as investments in education. Cameroon still lags behind tremendously, even though it's faring better within the Lake Chad Basin, lags behind in terms of educational attainment. Investment in education will go a great length to improve the sector, to improve the entire economy of the country. And if we focus on those areas that are in high demand or that are relevant in the international labor market, not just within Cameroon. So we have talked about the administrative reforms. We have talked about the health sector. I think also Cameroon can look at different avenues, particularly in tech. There are numerous small-scale tech entrepreneurs, and the government can actually do this by going through the private sector. I do not think whatsoever at any point in time that the government of Cameroon or any government for that matter has the capacity to keep track on the billions of transactions that take place within an economy. So channeling this money through different schemes, through the private sector as well as social services sector will go a great length to improve on the situation in the country. And there is one other final thing. Investment in infrastructure, particularly road infrastructure, road safety, and investment in security. There can't be any growth whatsoever without the availability of consistent security. If there is anything that has been the prerogative of any government anywhere, which is crucial, it is first and foremost the provision of security, the provision of an impartial judiciary to adjudicate disputes, and finally the putting in place of a necessary groundwork of infrastructure to kickstart the economy. These are priority areas I do think will go a great length to change the situation of the country.
Okay, well, we are hoping that Cameroon will be able to exact some proper channeling of this fund in the areas that you have mentioned, critical areas, I must say. And they will still need to watch it, because there's a probability that they may be heading towards debt distress, because according to reports, there's going to be an exponential increase in the debt of Cameroon from between 2022 and 2027. So they would have to watch these kind of borrowings. Of course, China is still somewhere hanging around as the largest creditor of Cameroon. So they will still need to watch it and see how they can plug these funds in viable investments for a better economic growth outlook, or let me put it that way, for the country. Thank you so much, Melaine, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the government of Cameroon has proposed a series of measures to help ensure the successful implementation of the agreement, which is expected to have long-term implications for the country's economy. Much is left to be seen now how committed the government will be to the economic recovery project that it is putting forward and presenting to the IMF. But then that's where we draw the curtains on today's edition of A Business Edge. You can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can head to our website at www.newscentral.africa and download our mobile app on App Store and Play Store. My name is Lekan Onabanjo. Until next time, have a beautiful weekend.